oh, I got a wife, I got a nice family, and no, it's wonderful. But no, it's I really enjoy all this talking. I love a good natter, as they say. And I do learn a lot. Um, I've got a lot of old-fashioned ways about me, which I just can't seem to get rid of them, but they put me in good stead. But I
No,
do
I
this.
think, Jeff, this is why we want you here today, because they're learning from me, and I've got my way of doing things, but it's not the only way. So we wanted to hear, a more traditional way and what we can learn from each other.
That's
So,
quite right. Yeah, that's quite right. No, I will give everybody everything that I possibly can. And one thing I do like to say, I don't tell people what to do. I always say this is what I do, and then they can make a choice. Now, I'll give you an instance. Last night, I was on Lockdown Cinema, and we had Caroline, Tom, there was quite a few on there, and we were talking about gardening. And then I showed them my pictures, and we went through all my garden as it was, and explained everything about my onions, my carrots, my beans, and so on. And you know, I didn't go to bed until 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, but it was very, very enjoyable. It really was. And they're a lovely crowd. They really are. And that's why I don't know how it come about really. I think it was Jason really. The, I'm one of the oldest ones in the group, and they call me Sir Jeff. Oh, I said, well, that's nice, but when are you going to knight me? But no, it's really wonderful. I really get on well with people.
yeah,
I think marvelous. But going back to the main subject, gardening, it's been art of my life right the way through. I've always loved it. Of course, there's got my I've had to go to work, but even so, in between, you pick up different things as you go along. And I always refer back to my father and my grandfather when we used to go to the allotments. And believe it or not, in 1944, even when the war was on, go out there and the gardening was different in the days than what it is today. Now, they were very good days. They were a little bit harder than what is today, but it was really good gardening. You really knew what to do. There's quite a few things that I tell people that when you do gardening, you must always do it in one way, get the basics right first of all, and the rest will follow. And I tell all people this here, but like I say, it's up to them whether they want to accept it. But I can't alter my way of explaining things. Now, what I've done, Jenny, excuse me, I'm in the middle of writing a little book, and I've already done 2 full pages of it, and it's so simple anyone can read it. And a couple of the friends on lockdown said, "Oh, that would be nice." So what I said, right? Well, for these 2 pages, I will send you all a copy, and you can decide for yourself whether you'd like to go down that road. And it's so simple. I see. I can't use big words, Jenny.
mm,
I just can't. I get really stuck. And when sometimes some people mention a big word, I could ask what it means because I don't know. You know. But I do learn quite a bit. But that is me. I'm very old fashioned in my way. So when
okay.
we when we start talking, uh, I don't want you to think I don't know what I'm talking about. It's just
We couldn't possibly think that, Jeff, because we know you've been at it like probably 4 times longer than I've been at it. So you've got a lifetime of experience. So we're not going to think you don't know what you're talking about, for
no,
sure. What I want to do, actually, because I think we've got a full class in now, so there are 11 of us. I
oh,
think Natalie's going to join as well at some point when she gets back from
yeah,
her thing. What just to explain, to summarise what we've done for Jeffrey's benefit so far, is we've seeded some of the earliest things we can already seed, like tomatoes, lettuces, things that actually don't mind. Like the tomatoes were happy to grow indoors under cover for quite some time. We seeded lettuces and radishes and things like that. We've put some onions in and all of the stuff that's quite hardy at the moment that will be quite happy under a plastic cover, or I'm in my conservatory at the moment, so they're quite happy in something like this.
Yeah.
And slowly people are sort of pricking out the little things, putting them in their little individual pots and growing them on. And we will be planting them out. We finish next week, but we can start planting those out probably mid-April, late April, as long as you keep them covered. So just put another plastic sheet over, and what we're looking for is the earliest possible crop we can get for some of these sort of easy to grow things like lettuce is very easy to grow. Yeah, things like that. So that's what we've been doing. So what I'm doing today is I've recorded 2 little videos, and I've got a number of other videos to show you, but in between the videos and the chat I want to sort of hand over to Jeff a little bit and for him to comment on what we're doing and what he would do differently. Okay, just so that we get more than one opinion.
Yes.
And if you've got questions, please just unmute yourself and ask them, because Rob's here but he's busy doing his thing. So feel free to hop in and ask a question if you've got one, and we'll put Jeff on the panel. Jeff's our resident expert, yeah, for today at least. So what I'm going to show them today, and show everyone here today, is square foot gardening, how to get the most out of a small space. We're going to be looking at tomatoes, aubergines and cucumbers. Now clearly it's not time yet to do anything with them. They won't be doing anything outside until mid-May.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Jeff?
Yes, I do. I agree entirely with that.
Yeah.
I like the way you put it, because some people think, oh, we can just put them out, and they don't give no forethought. Because you can grow these plants, you can think to yourself, well, okay, they're big enough, I'm going to put them out. But that is a bad mistake. You have always got to take the weather into account, because it differs so much, and some plants are very what's the word I'm looking for now? They're very weary of the type of weather they're being grown in. Now this is a fact. I've experienced it so many times over the years that I've come to the conclusion that I only put plants in a garden which I know are hardy, that can stand the real bad weather. But if there's any sign of weakness there, that they've either got to come back in, or you've got to leave them until a further date. And to me, if you, well, I look at it this way: if I do it that way, I know I'm not going to lose much. But if I take a chance, like if you get a weather forecast that says it's going to be fine, that can change so dramatically, you can lose everything. And that's why I think I said to you earlier on, I don't believe in putting things out in the garden until it's really safe.
You are in a slightly different climate to us, Jeff, because we're down south and you're out on the peninsula that is Wales on the south.
Yes, yeah.
So you've got much more wind, much more rain.
Yeah, that's correct.
Than we have. So you've got to bear this in mind. Where we are, we're slightly more secluded, more sheltered. There's not so much destruction, natural destruction. The weather's slightly warmer. So we're looking at 2 different growing areas. Would you agree, Jeff?
Well, yes, definitely. You're more flatter up there.
We are.
Where we are, we're in a catchment of the wind and the rain, and it is terrific. And what we get a lot of, which does a lot of damage to plants of any description, is this northeast wind. When we get that wind, we got to be very, very careful. But some people sort of ignore it. But when they ignore things like that, that tells me that they're not taking interest in what they're growing, and they're not looking after it. But no, I do agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just move on then, Jeff, if I may.
Yeah, please do.
we haven't had a sharing today, so as and when you want to ask a question, let us know how you've been getting on as well. So that when you unmute yourself, tell me, because I know poor Nat had a massive destruction event with her seedlings that were in a little tiny makeshift greenhouse, and they just flew over and the whole lot just got destroyed. So
dear.
yeah, it's very easy for that to happen. Obviously, you have to anchor it to the ground, which obviously she either didn't do or forgot to do. But anyway, what I'm going to show us today, so we're going to do square foot gardening. We're going to do a little bit about tomatoes, because you can always go back on this video and listen to again, and I'm always going to send the email out with all of the resources attached to it. So all of the videos that I show you, I will be sending to you anyway.
Right.
You should all have an email address that you're receiving emails from me too. Jeff, I'll add you as well, so you can see what I'm sending people. So what we're also going to do, we're going to be looking at how to grow herbs and other things from cuttings. And this is where I hope Jeff can step in and tell us some of his experience in growing from cuttings. And I'm going to show you live how to grow from cuttings, and we're also going to talk a little tiny bit about herbal remedies. I've got a whole video, well, I've got 5 videos actually on herbal remedies and kitchen cupboard medicine, and that's on Brighteon, and the channel is the Essex Witch. So that's me.
Essex Witch.
The Essex Witch on Brighteon. I've been called a witch so many times, I thought, oh, go on, let me just step into those shoes. So I'm going to show you first a video. Let me just see if I can pull it up quickly. It's my video. It's called An Introduction to Square Foot Gardening. So let me just share the sound. Let me just share the screen, and let's go into this. So this is it.
Good morning. Today I'm going to show you how to do a square foot gardening setup. So it's really simple. I've probably got 12 square feet here, but I'm going to use it as though it were 9. And what I could do, but I haven't got any string, is put some nails on the edges and wrap some string around them to divide it into 9. But because I haven't got string, I'm going to use canes. So this is how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to divide it into equal sections like this. And they're slightly bigger than a square foot, but I won't complain if you don't. So I'm just putting pretty much square foot things in there. I think because of those strawberries there, it's a little bit wider, so let's pull this over. I'll make sure the girls don't jump on here and start scratching, because they love things like this with wormies and little pictures underneath. So basically, there's your 9 square feet-ish. You know what I'm talking about. It's like noughts and crosses. And excuse me a moment. Come on, madam. Come on, Mads. No. Come on. Out. That's a kick up the bottom, that was. Come on, Mads. Come on. Right. So because we've got 9 square feet here, more or less. They're bigger, about 14 inches. But never mind. What I'm going to do, not today because I haven't got the plants ready yet, it's only the, is it the 10th of March today or the 9th? I think it's the 9th. So what I would do here is I would plant a different crop in each of those squares. If this was the only crop area I had to grow, I would grow stuff that would turn around quickly and I would replace it, because otherwise if you put stuff that grows in there very slowly, like leeks or leeks or cabbages or celeriac or swede, which grow very slowly, you'll be waiting a long time for one of those squares to produce something, and it won't be worth it at the end of the day either. So so what you need to do is just put crops in there that turn around quickly. If you've got another one of these, then you can mix and match it. You can put some long-term crops in there, but you're not going to get much out of a square foot. You might get 4 celeriacs out of a square foot, which is great if that's all you want, but it's going to take 6 months to grow. So that's my point with this. So you would put in here lettuces, radishes, spring onions, beetroot, turnips, anything leafy and quick growing, like pak choy, or the other one, what is it called now? Tatsoi, the mizunas, the oriental greens. You'd put chard, spinach, things that are nice and leafy, grow pretty quickly, and once they're spent after a few months, I mean, spinach and chard will go on for a long time, but they're beautiful to look at as well, and they just keep coming back and coming back. So if you've only got this amount of space, I would seriously grow stuff that turns around quickly. If you've got more space than this, then you can go for your longer crops. And if you've got space, one of these that you can devote entirely to brassicas, then you can cover it with a net, and the butterflies, the white cabbage whites, won't get on it. So what you would do is you'd plant your 6 lettuces, say for example in this square, 6 lettuces, and then as soon as they're done, you pull them out. It might take 2 months. You'll be picking leaves all the while, and then eventually they'll heart up and you can take them. As soon as they're done, you should have just a handful of seedlings ready to go back in, so maybe beetroot or spinach or something else. And what you'll find, this is the most intensive and productive way of growing food in a very tiny space. So it's really useful to grow food, to have this set up. It can produce food literally all year round. All you need to do in the middle of winter would be to cover it with plastic, and you could continue to harvest lettuce and spinach and chard all winter. So you just have to get your plantings in at the right time. So, last planting date for winter crops would probably be end of September, early October. And then you would plant up winter crops. So lettuces love the winter, etc, etc. You'd get 1 tomato in one of these squares. You'd have to stake it so it doesn't fall over. You'd get a squash in one of these squares. They grow quite quickly. It looks pretty as well, gives you a little bit of variety, but they're not winter crops. They will be over with by the end of September, early October, but a good chance then to plant in their space some lettuce or winter greens of some description or another. So I hope that introduces you a little bit to square foot gardening. You see, it's very simple. I would put strings up if I was doing it myself right now, because then they don't move, they don't get blown away, and it just gives you a guide as to where to plant. And what I'll do on this Friday's course, is I'll talk about how dense to put things in these squares. So you would put perhaps 6 lettuces in one, 8 beetroots in another, or if you've got, multi-soap plug beetroots, you'd put maybe 6 in instead of 8, because you're going to get a lot of produce out of that. The same with turnips, 6 instead of 8 if they're multi-sow into plugs, and so on and so forth. So I hope that helps, and I will show you more on Friday. Bye for now.
Okay. So, now let me unmute Jeff. I've asked to unmute you, Jeff. Can you unmute yourself, Jeffrey? How do you do it, guys? When I ask to unmute, does it flash up a little screen saying press here?
There we are.
Oh, well done. Excellent.
There we are. Yeah.
Right, just to keep your channel open so you can comment as I talk.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea of square foot gardening is that you absolutely maximise your growing space so that you've constantly got a turnover of new vegetables and leaves and things that you can grow very quickly. So lettuces, radishes, all of the things I mentioned, all of those, except for the delicate fruits, so you're talking about cucumbers, squashes, tomatoes, courgettes, all of those are quite delicate. They have to be grown in the sunshine in the summer. They will just collapse the minute a frost comes in October, and that's them spent. And the fruits obviously are the seeds, so you save the seeds from the fruit for next year. But if you want to have greens all winter, then you make sure you've got little seedlings ready to go in. Normally, from sowing a seed to planting it out, we're looking at 3 to 4 weeks. So if you can get a rota going, so the minute, for example, if you plant your baby lettuce seedlings in your square foot, and then at the same time you plant those, you put your seeds in for the next batch, yeah? Then in the next 4 to 6 weeks, those lettuces will be done. You can keep, taking the leaves. And then once you've got swept those out, you can put the next lot in. Yeah? Because they'll take 4 weeks or so growing in little pots, and then they're ready to go in. And if they're not ready to go in that square, because it's good to mix and match, move stuff around so that you're not taking the same nutrients out of the same square for the same plant, because each plant needs different nutrients. So you might replace those with beetroot or spinach instead of lettuces, but your lettuces can go in another square. But you're kind of constantly just feeling your way through. I've got a few seedlings growing. The minute I cut those out, I'm going to replace them in. You might even do something like cut a lettuce head off in one of your squares and immediately plant it with a beetroot or a turnip seedling that you've got going. So you're constantly turning over. And this is, in a very small space like that, you can actually grow an awful lot of food. Yeah, and especially in high summer when the weather's fine and everything's good, it all grows obviously a lot slower in winter. And I've found, and Jeff might like to back me up on this, I don't know, that between the middle of December and the middle of January, it's dormant. Nothing.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. And I would say, Jeff, that's because of lack of light. What would you say?
Well, light plays a very big part in anything that is growing. It always has been that way, and it will not alter. Certain things that need light constantly, maybe, are onions. They are the ones that do need a lot of light for growing. And looking at that design that you done there, they're very, very nice too. I would be calling that my nursery for the plants, which, as you quite rightly said, you can change over whenever you wish to and put different items in that ground. Now, the only one thing I'd like to ask you, Jenny, if you don't mind, is when that is built and you've got nothing in there, do you test it for pH? And do you put a compass of some description within that soil?
Okay, I never test my soil. I never test it unless I'm growing something that needs acidic soil or ericaceous soil, like blueberries, or I can't think of anything else at the moment. But if something needs acidic soil, then I'll put an ericaceous compost on that area to acidify the ground. That's the only thing I will do. Otherwise, the only compost I'm using on this kind of setup is compost that I've made myself. So all the ingredients of my compost are cardboard, chicken manure, hay, straw. So all kinds of different carbons and nitrogens, grass cuttings, leaves. And because there's so much carbon in the compost that I make, it becomes very friable, very easy. It's not this clumpy, mucky mess that, like if you just put all your nitrogens together, it comes out all so clumpy, horrible, thick, smelly mess. If you put loads of carbons in it, it comes out in a nice, friable soil. That's the only thing I'd put in. Over to you, Jeff. What would you say?
Right, no, that's very well put, that was. Now, I myself, I'm a big believer, there's only one fertilizer I really use, and that is horse manure. But there is another one which is very, well, there's two actually. Number one, well, I just said horse manure, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. And the other one is fish blood and bone. Now that got the essentials in everything that a plant will need. And not only that, it does help to sweeten the ground with, if I may say, just a little bit of rock lime, not the ordinary white lime, rock lime. Now that rock lime, there is more goodness in that than the ordinary white lime from white stone. And I found I've always done a little sprinkle over it just to sweeten the ground up. Now, I said to you about testing it. I do, I'm a big believer, I test everything. I'm an addict for doing that. And I do get the enjoyment. And it tells you how damp it is, what light you're getting, and so on. And so I do believe in that. But what you have done there, I thought that's a good idea, that is. The only concern well, not a concern, I shouldn't use that word. Do you cover that over at night, or do you leave it in the open?
If it's high summer, I leave it wide open.
Yeah, in the summer, it's fine.
And if I've got seedlings in there that need a bit of protection, I either put a fleece down or I put a piece of plastic sheet over the top just to protect it from that cold wind, especially if it's in an open aspect. If it's in an open aspect, then you need to protect it with something.
Yeah.
If it's in a secluded part of the garden that traps the sunlight, even in early spring, I'm not so worried about it. So that's how I work.
Yeah,
What would you say?
No, I think I agree with you there. But we all got different ways of doing things. I think by asking these questions, you learn from one another. But that's a nice little system that you've got there. Where's Martha? How can I put this? Now, the planting of seeds in that particular place or anywhere else, I seen when you gave a preview of your course on the first week, you show on your little, you were sowing a few seeds, showing people how to sow seeds. And I thought, well, that's good, that is. Now, why I'm saying this now is that's excellent. It's how you sow seeds will make all the difference in the world. Now, a lot of people, and this is no disrespect to anyone whatsoever, it's just what I do. If I'm going to sow a seed of any description, I do it one way, which I've done for many, many years, and it's always been a good way, and it is very, very helpful to people who have not got 100% eyesight, you know what I mean, who's not too clear. On the soil, we'll use your little pats that you just done there, set in squares. I make sure that soil is turned over. And what I always do with it, I double trench it from one end to the other end. And then I even it out to wherever I want. And then I chop it with, I made it myself actually. It's only a piece of steel with a little piece of roller. And I just chop it up and down like that. All the way right down. And I put a line down through, so I've got a nice straight line. Once that is done, and it's nice and fine, what I do, and this is what I enjoy doing actually, I get a cane like you were using there, and I put that cane on that soil by the side of that line, and I depress it down into the soil. So therefore you've got like a half a tube all the way down, and it's nice and flat, and you can see every seed that you're dropping in there, and it will tell you where it's going to go. Under normal circumstances, people sprinkle it down. But where people make a mistake is, you should never touch seeds with your hands, because there's certain things on your skin and on your hands that goes on that seed, and it does affect the seed. So what you need to do is to make like a little folder with an envelope and just tap it out. Or another way, if you've got the patience to do it, is to get a matchstick, a little tub of water, just dip it in there, dip it up, you can pick one seed up at a time. But if you've got the patience to do that. A lot of people haven't. But if you've got all the time in the world, why not do it? It's a good way. And you know exactly where it's going. Now, going back to that indentation, all you see up through there, then all you got to do is just sprinkle fine soil over the top, give it a nice water, job done. And that's how I do my seeds.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff.
And I get excellent results from that, because I will know. You can more or less put a count how many seeds you put in there. And if they all don't come up, you think, well, why hasn't that one come up? Or why is that not coming up there? And so on. It's all these little things that I'm very conscious about it. I shouldn't be really, but I want to know why the seed is not grown. Now, as you will understand, you can go and you can buy your seeds from anywhere, but it is a foregone conclusion you will always get some that will not germinate. It's always been the same. You'll never get 100% from a full packet of seed.
Okay. If I can stop you there a moment, Jeff.
Yes,
Any questions, anyone? Has anyone got any comments or insights or questions? Josie.
Hello. I'm supposed to get on this week. Sorry I've missed you. Lovely to meet you, Jeff.
Yes, and you, Josie.
How deep do you make those square, your square garden? How deep do you go down?
Do you mean the gap between the soil and the top?
The depth. Like if I was going to build one, how deep would it need to be?
Well, mine is literally 6 inches.
Oh wow! Okay.
You can even do it. You can even do it on the ground. You know, just like one little pallet wood high. It doesn't have to be high. It just needs to be demarcated so you can see where you're doing it.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. So what I'm going to do now, Jeff, thanks for that. It's interesting because we've done a lot of no dig, which means we don't do any digging at all. We just keep laying compost on the top. But so guys, you can hear how our traditions are very different, and a lot of Jeffrey's age group will garden that way. They will dig, lots of digging and lots of mixing in manure and stuff. It works, it's fantastic. I mean, the old fellas at the allotment grow some amazing veg, probably better than me. Well, definitely better than me. But I put that down to the fact I'm not there enough. These people are there like 3-4 times a week, and sometimes I go like a week or two without being there, and I haven't watered and I haven't weeded. And of course, if you don't keep touching, you know, the areas that you're growing in, if you don't keep checking, not every single day, but you know, like 3-4 times a week, then everything gets out of control. It gets too dry. You'll find you can't get the moisture in the soil anymore because the soil is too dry. So you need to keep on top of the watering, and you know, if it gets really dry, you need to drench the ground with water rather than water every day, just so that you get the proper soaking. If you water every day, then the roots stay near the top of the soil, and the plants get weak. So you need to get the water in deep. Yeah. So what I want to show you next is it's another video. This is Square Foot Gardening. It's a channel on YouTube called Grow Veg. They're very simplistic, and this is why I wanted to just show you this video. Let me just share screen. Where are we? Share screen, share sound, share. Hold on. Here we go. So.
If there was a method of gardening which promised 100% of the harvest using just 20% of the space and only 2% of the work, most gardeners would be very interested. In fact, there is a method which claims to do just that. Square foot gardening is a simple way to create easy to manage raised beds that need a minimum of time spent maintaining them. So, how does it work, and what do you need to know before planting a square foot garden? Square foot gardening was developed by retired engineer Mel Bartholomew in the 1970s. He used his analytical skills as an engineer to eliminate the inefficiencies he saw in traditional gardening methods. In particular, he found the average gardener was spending hours weeding the big gaps between long rows of plants, creating unnecessary work for themselves. Square foot gardening rapidly gained popularity during the 1980s through Mel's first book and television series. Mel's work is carried on through the Square Foot Gardening Foundation, which promotes the method around the world. The building blocks of the square foot gardening method are raised beds, typically 4 feet by 4 feet and 6 to 12 inches deep. Almost anyone will be able to reach into the middle of the bed with these dimensions. These raised beds can be placed on any surface in your garden, grass, soil or concrete. It doesn't really matter what's underneath, because each raised bed will be filled with a rich, moisture retentive soil. On top of this, add a 1 foot by 1 foot grid. Mel suggests making this out of wood as it makes it easier to work with later on. These beds mean there's no need to walk on your soil, which risks impacting it and reducing drainage. Keeping off the soil is common practice now, but in the 1970s it was unheard of. How else would you weed along that 30-foot row? The second vital building block is the soil. Known as Mel's Mix, this is seen as a key part of square foot gardening. It's made from 1/3 peat moss, 1/3 vermiculite, which is a mined and processed mineral which helps to retain moisture in the mix and also keeps it airy, and 1/3 blended potting soils or compost. Either use your own compost if you make it, or buy several different types and mix them together. Increasingly, many people prefer more sustainable alternatives to peat moss, in which case a blended mix of coir and potting soil can be used as a substitute for the first third. The mix is lightweight, making it easy to work with, and nutrient rich, so it has all the necessary goodness for raising great plants without ever having to add fertiliser. Just top up the beds with more mix if they need it. Many people add a layer of potting soil or compost at the start of the year. Each 1 foot square is planted with just one type of crop. Across your raised bed, it's recommended that you plant each square with different crops and companion planting flowers. So in this 4 feet by 4 feet bed, you could plant 16 different crop types. To keep the planting simple, there are no plant spacings to remember. Instead, each square has either 1, 4, 9 or 16 plants in it, depending on the size of the plant. Easy to position in each square by making a smaller grid in the soil with your fingers. It really is that simple. The garden planner makes it easy to plan out square foot beds with the correct number of plants in each square. Enable the square foot gardening mode by clicking the SFG button. Now when you select a crop, the garden planner will give you a 1 foot square block that can be easily dropped into place. The number indicates how many of that crop you can grow in the space. Plan out your bed in this way and then use the plant list to see how many of each plant you need to grow. Climbing plants such as peas, beans and cucumbers should be placed along one edge so they can climb up supportive netting. Other crops such as fruit bushes, which don't fit into square foot gardening squares, will automatically retain their standard spacing, and if you want to plant traditional rows of crops, just switch off SFG mode and add them as usual. In traditional gardening methods, you would use most of the packet of seeds along a whole row and then thin out the seedlings to the correct spacings. In square foot gardening, you use just a small pinch of seeds in each planting space, usually 2 or 3 seeds. With this approach, you use less seed than you would if you were using traditional methods. And thinning out is now simplified too. You don't have to worry about the correct spacings. If 2 or 3 seedlings grow, you can just use scissors to snip off the weaker ones. That way you won't disturb the roots of the strongest seedlings, a common problem if you pull up or transplant the extras. It's easy to create structures for the raised beds which will protect your crops and help them to grow. A cage made out of chicken wire will protect it from pets and large pests like squirrels or birds. A dome support can be covered with plastic to keep out a spell of poor weather, or with horticultural fleece to reduce frost damage. And a plant support can easily be created, either at the back so beans and peas can climb up them, or across the top of the bed to provide support to crops such as tomatoes. The all-new Square Foot Gardening book contains full plans of how to make these structures yourself. Square foot gardening is an almost fail-safe way to get started with growing your own, but it's not to everyone's taste. The experienced gardener can quickly outgrow the method, particularly if they want to grow large quantities of crops such as potatoes, fruit bushes and perennial plants such as rhubarb and artichoke, without the expense of the special Mel's Mix soil and raised beds. Square foot gardening works brilliantly for beginners, for those who only have a small amount of space, and for creating low maintenance gardens close to the house to grow high value crops. That's why 35 years on, square foot gardening is still going strong.
was just a little video. I don't bother with all of that mixing up vermiculite and all that stuff. I find personally that my own compost is enough, but I do know that different plants have different needs. But I think for absolute beginners, just go with, you might want to mix up some horse manure, especially if it's really well rotted. Or what I did with that bed out the front was I did a lasagna bed underneath. So I put cardboard and then horse manure and then grass cuttings and I just layered it up. And on the very top, it was just all of my compost out of the compost bin. So you don't make your life more difficult than it needs to be. Plants will grow pretty much anywhere. The thing they really don't like very well, all these delicate plants that we're talking about, is clay, because clay's got no air in it. It's got no. It's probably good for potatoes. Apparently, across Essex, we're good potato growers around here, and they do grow in clay. But when you're trying to nurture delicate plants, you need a light soil, something easy and airy that holds moisture and that isn't too clumpy. Any questions before we hand over to Jeff on that? No? All clear, Elizabeth?
Oh, they don't want to say nothing.
We've bamboozled them.
Hello, Jenny. Thank you. That's very clear.
Okay, that was all okay, was it for you? Okay. Jeff, what do you reckon? Have you come across that method before?
Yes, I have heard of it, but you more or less give the answer to what I'll be doing. I'm not too interested in that sort of thing. Number one is it can be a bit on the expensive side for a start. Time the square is made, the raised sides, front and back. Then you mixture of the compost, which I notice quite a bit in it. But I'm totally agree with you on that. I will always voice my opinion quite differently, but that is not much different than the little square garden that you did in the beginning.
Yeah.
There's very little difference.
Yeah.
I mean, this was more of a, shall I say, more of a professional way of doing things.
Yeah.
It's not what a normal dog gardener would do. I mean, I cannot think of anybody who does that sort of gardening. Although I have seen it myself, like on the television and things like that. But it's not something. I'd be wrong if I say I recommend it. I can only say I recommend it for people who want to do that sort of thing and who do not do a lot of gardening.
Yeah.
Now, there's one point I'd like to pick up on you straight away. The soil. Now, altogether, there are 10 types of soil. And the main ones are the 5 main ones that we use. Now, you just mentioned one there about clay. You get clayey soil, which, as you quite rightly said, it cannot breathe. Then you get the dark soil, which is very good for potatoes, believe it or not. And you've got the red soil. And then another one is you get the slaty soil. Now, the slaty soil and the clay soil, that to me, they're sort of I just put them on one side, because although I haven't got that problem with it, it is not very good soil at all for growing anything. It's all right if you're going to grow a tree, no doubt that will take root and that will grow in that. But anything else, the other types of soil, this is always brilliant, and you can always treat it. Now you come back to the same thing, which I do think quite a lot of, is horse manure and feeding the ground. Now, you might laugh at what I'm going to tell you now, but this is a fact. When I get horse manure, which I've not been able to get any this year, I might be lucky next week, believe it or not. When I get that and it's well and truly rotten, I always like to dry it out. And then when it's dry, now this is the funny part, I am in the middle of purchasing my wife a new mixer, because the mixer that she's got now is a very old one and it's got the plastic bowl on it and the big cutting knives down the bottom. Now, my intentions is this, and it's quite simple. When I get that, and of course it's electric, it'll be in my greenhouse, on my bench, and it's not a lot. And once that horse manure is fairly dry, I will be putting some of that horse manure in that bowl, and I will switch it on, and it's going to cut it up, and it'll turn it like fine powder. Now, just if you stop to think about it now, when that is fine powder, whatever soil you're going to put in, and you want to make sure there's a bit of manure in it, or ingredients, whatever, it is there. And you just sprinkle it on like sprinkling sugar on the cake. Now, this is, a lot of people might not want to do this, but this is how I work. I think of all these things, well, I can use that, I can do this. Instead of, except for in the garden, when you're double digging, put it in, but to go in with your plants, you will not beat horse manure under any circumstances. But there is another one that I do use with it, and that is seaweed extract. Now that is very, very good. Very good. I swear by that. It is wonderful. So I got the horse manure and I got the seaweed extract. And those are my two main ingredients that I use for the garden. I don't use nothing else. And also, I use the horse manure and put in my water. Now, they all laugh when I tell them this. We were talking about it last night. I get ladies' stockings. I don't know if you can get them now. And I used to get the horse manure and I fill the stockings up with the horse manure. And across my water tub, I put a bar and I tie the end up with the stocking and it goes down into the water. Normally I get 2 stockings and they're both of them full. My drum is filled up with water. I just give it a quick twizzle and I'll let it go for a few days. And when I come to get the water out the bottle, it is beautiful and brown. Well, the colour of manure. And that's what I feed. That's what I feed. Everything I feed with that. And I've been doing this for years. But the problem I got now, Jenny, I can't get any stockings.
Girls, Jeffrey wants you to send him your stockings.
Someone put Jeffrey's address in the comments and we can always send him some in the post.
Oh, dear. This is what I like, but that's true what I'm telling you. But I know people laugh at it, but it's only because I mentioned the word stockings, you know. I don't go down to town asking every woman if they got any stockings. I don't do that.
What do husbands think?
Honestly.
Yeah, but no.
Hail Sir Jeffrey! Hail Sir Jeffrey!
But no, this is one of the old ways I think.
Yeah.
I don't always use modern methods when I can use the ones I've always been taught, you know. But
Okay. It's
this
lovely.
is
I can see everyone taking notes, Jeff, because they're really absorbing what you're talking about. Stuffing stockings. Because we're ladies, you see. If we haven't got stockings, we've got tights. That's a double whammy. We've got 2 on 1 then, you see.
no, well, there you are. What can I say?
But anyway, let me move on, Jeff, if I may.
Yeah.
So we're going to look, I'm going to quickly show you about taking cuttings for herbs. I've got one little 3-minute video with that, and then we're going to move over on to planting tomatoes and showing you what happens there.
That's lovely.
So what I'm going to show you firstly, I picked these out of my garden this morning. Let me just see. So these are rosemary twigs. These are fresh ones. The further down the stem they get more woody, but these are the fresh ones on the top, as you can see. So they're nice and fresh on the top, and further down they get more woody.
Right.
So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to do an experiment with these, because I have tried it both ways before, but we're going to do an experiment. We're going to pull off all of these. Let me see if I can get it on speaker view, and then you might be able to, if you can put me on speaker view, but this should change the video as well. So I'm going to take all of the leaves off the bottom here. So you can probably see what I'm doing. I'm just stripping the leaves off like this. And the great thing about growing from cuttings is you can walk past a rosemary bush or a lavender bush and you can just accidentally pick a piece, take it home, and you've got your seeds. Now what I'm going to do with this now, you won't see this in a video anywhere. I'm stripping the bark off of that woody bit at the bottom, just with my thumbnail. So I'm just, oh, there's a little bug there. God, my chickens would love that. So I'm just stripping the bit off the bottom because we want to expose the areas where the little roots are going to come from. They're going to come from where the actual leaves were. That's where the roots are going to come from. So you'll find some little nodules on the plant, and that's where they're going to come from. I'm just going to make sure that they're open to the possibility of putting shoots out. So that's what I'm doing there. Now, I'm going to I'll do this after today, I'm going to put some in water, and this is just filtered water, and I'm going to put some, in a pot. Okay, so I'm going to put some, literally just push that in like this, right down to so that the leaves are showing. Just make sure it's in, and then I'm going to give it a whole bunch of water. And we're going to see which one roots first, or which one looks the healthiest. Now these are ones I put in, I think last summer. There was a whole bunch of them. I put them straight in the soil, in the compost, in the pots, and these are the ones that have actually survived. So they've been outdoors in the winter, all winter, and these ones have actually rooted in the soil. So they're healthy, they're ready to go. So what I would do with those now is put them in a bigger pot and grow them on, or you can even just put them straight in the ground. And if you don't know already, rosemary bushes and lavender will behave the same. They're massive bushes. They can get very, very big. It will take 4 or 5 years for them to get very big, but they will put new shoots out every spring, summer, and the tender bits at the top are fantastic for teas, and you can put them in your dinners, and they've also got very strong healing properties, rosemary. So that's, there's lots of healing with rosemary. You find that the plants that survive, the hardy plants that survive the winter, they're hardly ever eaten by animals of any description. So they're almost like, they stand up as an example of how strong you can be. So the herbs that survive all the winter are very healthy, health-giving herbs, because they're absorbing all of the light and the strength of the environment. And these ones are so hardy, they'll just keep going and going and going year after year. So that's rosemary. What we're going to do now is pretty much exactly the same. This is a purple sage plant that I just, cutting, that I took this morning. And you can see it's quite bushy at the bottom here. So I'm literally just going to take all of those leaves off at the bottom. So you can probably see I'm just picking them off like this. I'm going to take these ones off, the biggest ones, and I'm going to leave one big one and these little ones in the middle here. And I'm not going to strip the bit back so much, because this isn't so woody, and you can see there's already some nice little nodules where the leaves have been. Yeah, and again I'm going to put some in the water, and I'm just going to do this. This works with me every year, but you don't get 100% rooting rate, so that's why I do at least a dozen every year. I sell some on, I give some away, and I keep some myself. So with the sage, again, I'm just putting it in the soil, just like that, and I'll put some in the water as well. Now there's something I want to show you. These I cut from, have got any holes in the bottom? No, let's just water them a bit. So I cut these from a very, very mature thyme plant that I've got over the allotment, and I put them in. It would have been before the course started, so it was about a week before the course started, so it was about February, early February. And these were just twigs that I've put in, and what you can see is how they've started to shoot here, the very fresh green. This is a very fresh green tip. Not all of them have done that, you can see. This one hasn't done much. It may still shoot, I don't know, but where you can see these little shoots coming up, that means it's got roots on. That means there's roots on the bottom.
Yeah,
So I would give this another week or two and wait and see if more of them produce little tiny new fresh shoots like that. And then I must have put about 12 in that pot. And what I will do in a couple of weeks' time is I will just lift them all out very gently and pot them on in their own individual pots. Okay, and that's thyme. Now, I make tea with all of these herbs, and thyme is really, really good for joints. It's really good for aching muscles and joints, and I often make thyme with honey tea, and it is absolutely delicious. So, and you can feel, when you're drinking it, you can feel the health-giving properties. It kind of regenerates you from the inside, you can feel it. So that's thyme. And I just wanted to, so I've got a few bits here. I just wanted to show you, I know Jeff was fascinated with this last time I spoke to you. Yes, thyme's good for a cold. Fantastic, thank you for that, Nat, that's brilliant. This
Mare's tail.
This is mare's tail or horse tail. So this will be up probably end of April. You'll see it shooting up. And this is stuff, I just dry it out and I make it into a tea. You don't need to go to Holland and Barrett to get yourself the horsetail. It is everywhere.
Oh, it is. It grows.
Isn't it? It's an allotment keeper's nightmare, really. It's just everywhere. So you just dry it out and you just stick it in a jar. And this is silica based, so it's got lots of silicon in. And silica apparently absorbs aluminium. So if you want to keep your brain sharp into old age, then you want to get rid of heavy metals out of the body, then this is the tea to have. On its own, it's not very tasty. I mean, it's not evil, but it's not like lemon balm or something. So I do mix this with lemon balm or mint. I've got chocolate mint, I've got peppermint, I've got pineapple mint, all kinds of different mints in the garden. And I mix it with this. Sometimes I just pick a little bit of rosemary. This is what I did this morning. I had horsetail with rosemary and I had some tiny, tiny leaves of lemon balm that's just coming up out of the ground at the moment. The lemon balm is the best. It's just so beautiful. It's very calming and very calming and very refreshing, the lemon balm. So I just took literally just a few tiny leaves. I put this and I put my rosemary in this morning. Rosemary can be quite overpowering in a tea, so you literally just need, let me see if I can, you literally just need the tiniest amount, probably just a few leaves like that, and that will give you quite a strong flavour of rosemary. And I find if I put too much rosemary in, it's quite overpowering. So, and also you can use parsley in tea. Parsley is really good for ladies' issues, hormonal, ups and downs. Really, really good for that. And this is the last jar I want to show you. This is some stinging nettle that I picked last autumn, and I dried it, and I make a tea out of that as well. All of these very kind of hardy plants. I mean, this one, obviously, it dies back in the winter, but once you've got nettle root in your ground, it will come back and come back and come back.
Oh yeah,
and come back.
definitely.
Yeah, we know that, don't we, Jeff?
Very much so. But can I ask you a question, Jenny?
Of course.
That everything that you've seen now is very interesting. It really is. We did speak about this when I first spoke to you quite a few months ago. The question that I would like, it's not that I would not try it, because I'm on such a heavy dosage of medication. Would it interfere with that?
It shouldn't do, Jeff. But a doctor won't be able to tell you, because they're not trained in this, so they wouldn't know.
This is my problem, you see.
I wouldn't think it would. I would think that the herbs are very gentle and they know what to do in the body. Do you know what I mean? That's what I would suggest. But I really don't know, because it's something that hasn't been studied. The doctors don't study herbs, they don't study them. The pharmaceuticals obviously don't want people curing themselves, because that's why they have all these toxic chemicals that they give people. But I wanted to just, I'm going to show a video in a moment, hopefully. It's quite a long one, but I wanted to show a video about tinctures. So these two tinctures, this one is Mullen.
Mullen, you mentioned that to me.
Mullen. Okay, so this is vodka with mullein leaves in it. Not now, I've strained it off. Now this is a fantastic bronchial breathing support. And I made it last summer because mullein was everywhere last year and the year before. It was all over the place. And the woman we're about to watch on video, she talks about the fact that what you need for the following year is in abundance the year before. So when you watch nature and you see what's coming up and you understand what the treatments are that they're good for, you can predict what sorts of illnesses and viruses are going to come out the following year. Now, she did a video in 2018 and she said this is really abundant this year, and she said it's no good picking it and thinking you're going to use it immediately. You have to prepare the year before to get your tinctures ready. So this I prepared, mullein was abundant last summer, and so I picked a whole bunch of mullein and I drenched it in vodka, and then I strained off the leaves after a number of months. It was about 3 months, and I've now got this tincture. Now this tincture, I have used it, but I don't have bronchial issues. I actually made it to support people that might be suffering with COVID or might have breathing issues. So that's why I made it. I made it not for me, well, I made it just in case, obviously, but I made it so that people, you know, can be supported if they need it. So that's why I made that one. And this one is self-heal.
Sorry.
Yes.
The mullein plant. What does that look like, or what's that?
We're going to have a look at a video in a minute and you'll be able to see what it looks like. Yeah, that's no problem. Mullein is a massive leaf. It's a beautiful furry leaf, and it's got a lovely spire of yellow flowers that come up once it's flowered and it's moving on. But, and briefly, this is self-heal. Self-heal grows in almost every lawn. It's a little purple flower that comes up in the lawn. You can pick it, and if you hold the stem in your fingers and you turn it around like this, it's square. You can feel that the stem is square, and that reassures you that that is self-heal and nothing else. So the purple flower and the square stem, and that's self-heal. Self-heal is a fantastic healer of all things. It's anti-inflammatory. What else does it do? I've got a little video lined up for us to watch that as well. So this has got 3 very important properties. Now this is a tincture, so you use this as a medicine, but I used self-heal as a herb last summer. We went and collected it and we made tea with it. And again with self-heal, lemon balm, mint, wild grass, horsetail, mixing in different varieties. It is the most health-giving thing you can imagine. You feel healthy from the inside. Yeah, so it's just amazing. So I want to show a couple of videos on this. Now I can see some amazing comments in the comment section. I'm going to play a video and I'm going to copy and paste them, because once the video is finished, the chat will disappear. So what I'm going to do while I'm playing this next video, I'm going to just copy and paste everything into a document, so don't mind me. And let me just see if we can line up the mullein video. Oh, no, first planting up. Where is it? Hold on a second. Oh, here's the mullein video. Let me just share screen. It's about 15 minutes long, which is quite long, but I really like this young woman. She's an American woman. She's got the most crooked teeth, so that tells you she's not a typical American. And she's just such a lovely little witchy lady. So here we go.
Okay, so today while I was out and about, I also found a ton of Mullen pushing up, and I'm pretty excited about that. You know, kind of watching the plant allies and seeing what's waking up on the land and seeing what will be like heavy this year, like heavy and like who's like showing up the most. I'm seeing a lot of like lung related allies, like a lot of, you know, the Mullen, the violet. I think it's going to be a very like last season we had tons of pearly everlasting, and that's a subalpine plant. You know, we live in high elevation, and I said, I bet we're gonna have a real up in the head sinusy type sickness fall, and I called it, at least for here. And so last year there wasn't very much Mullen. This year there's a ton, and there wasn't much violet last year, and then this year there's a lot. So I'm thinking in our area anyhow we're gonna get hit with some like lung crud come this fall. So I was like, let's get to making some Mullen tincture now, so we have it on hand when we need it. That's the most important thing with herbal plant medicine, is that you have it when you need it. Not you're like, oh, I'm so sick, I better order this now. Get out there and get the work done now, so you have it when you need it. So, you know, you've probably met Mullen before. She's nice and fuzzy, and if you're looking on how to make a Mullen tincture, I bet you, something in my nail, I bet you already have a bunch of Mullen that you're trying to figure out how to use. I like to make an infusion with her dried leaf, but with her fresh leaf, I make a tincture because I only use I almost said dry, fresh plant matter to make tinctures. So we're going to make a Mullen tincture today, and it's going to be super easy. But I'm going to take a bunch out here. This basket is full. See? Lots of Mullen. And this is just from taking 1 or 2 leaves from each plant we came across. So we found a really great field far away from roads and all that stuff where she has just really latched on. So I'm going to get myself a good pile here. I promise this is not complicated. You don't have to be a genius, but also you are smart enough to do this, I promise. I'm going to wipe up this puddle before it gets me. I see it coming towards me. It's going to get me. It's, you know, been raining on and off here, so it's Eastern Oregon in the spring, Northeast Oregon in the spring, so you know. So, you are definitely smart enough to make a tincture. It's not complicated at all. Mullen tincture is really good for coughing and kind of just lung health in general. So all we're going to do is chop her up. Now in other ones you guys have seen me use like an ulu or a knife on a cutting board, but with Mullen, just the sheer volume of her, it's easier just to chop her up. I don't want you to pulverize your plant allies. I don't want you to, you know, chop them down into oblivion, because we know what they are, they know what they are, and the alcohol knows what it's doing, and the plant knows what it's doing. So most of the time when people make, and you guys have probably heard this in other videos, most of the time when people like chop their plants up into like basically a paste, they are intending to dump really high grain alcohol over it, high proof alcohol. That way they only have to wait a few weeks for their tincture to be ready. But I'm telling you, you are not going to get a well-rounded tincture that way. And if you are going to hurt yourself with a safe, simple plant ally like Mullen, that's going to be how you do it. Also, if you're using dried plant matter to make a tincture. Like in her state right now, she's whole, she has properties that are available to us while she's still fresh. And then also when you only use 100 proof vodka like we'll be doing here, with 100 proof vodka being 50% alcohol and 50% water, you do get some of the water-based properties when you're making a tincture too. And so you have this whole balanced plant medicine versus, like you could almost say that like when you make a tincture with dried plant matter or with really crazy high proof alcohol, like grain alcohol, you could almost say that it's stronger, that it's more effective. But that just, I mean, it is, but it's strong in the way that it can hurt you. And so I find that when you make tinctures with only fresh plant matter and nothing stronger than 100 proof, there's a piece of pitch on my pieces on my scissors. Nothing stronger than 100 proof vodka, then you get this nice, gentle, whole medicine that's not going to be as likely to harm anybody or yourself. And I find it, I don't even know how to put words to it. It just, to me, it's really important. And I will not make a tincture with dried plant matter. Roots maybe being the exception. But even then, I do my best to use.
Are you okay with this, guys?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah? Okay, I'll carry on playing it. As she talks, she gives a lot of information about why she's doing what she's doing, which is why I love watching this lady. She is of the wood.
Fresh roots too.
Panel.
Yeah, no, it's
So you'll see me kind of like examining her before I cut her up, because Mullen, in all of her fuzzy gloriness, likes to hold on to things, and this is from a forest, so trees like to drop things and things like that. So I just make sure that the only thing that's going into my tincture is Mullen. On that note, I don't like to mix my tinctures. I want just one plant at a time. You're less likely to have adverse reactions. Plus, if you do have a reaction, whether it's for a good reaction, like a healthful reaction, or a bad reaction, like an allergic reaction, or your body's just like, hey, I don't like that plant, you don't have to play the guessing game of which one it was, like which one made me feel good or which one made me feel bad, because then it's like a dangerous process. Let's say you're allergic to something, but there's 5 plants in a tincture. Well, which one are you allergic to? You can't even avoid which one might have caused the reaction, and you kind of got to start all over again. So just safe, simple plants with just simple processes, and you're not as likely to hurt yourself. So the reason we're cutting this up a bit is so she has more surface space. And I really like the fresh leaves that come up off of Mullen. It scared me. The dog tried to get in the room. I really like, maybe jump good, the fresh leaf that comes up in the spring, because I feel like she's more potent. Not potent in like a strong, better for you way, but she's just more, dog out. Little dog just scratches. The big dog's like, I can open this door. I feel like she's more, I don't know, she's just like, she just woke up and she's just full, and she's not exerting her energy anywhere than creating these leaves. So like a lot of times if you get a plant when it's blooming, all of its energy is going into blooming. Right now, all of her energy is in these leaves. I also like it at about this size, the small rosette. Looks like a little rose.
Oh, recording, but it's recording on yours, isn't it?
Oh, it's saying recording now.
All right,
When you done.
At least we've got it recording.
Yeah.
Woo! Sorry, guys. What a nightmare. Well, listen, we're 12:30, but if we're okay to go on for half an hour still, and if not, if you need to sort of bail out, just bail out or carry on talking, and we'll at least have the video. We'll patch it together somehow, and we'll send it into the chat and on email, so we've actually got it somehow. Is that all right?
That's okay. Right. I don't go bed until 11 o'clock, so we're okay.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. Right, so just to summarise, obviously I'm showing you herbs because it's such an important part, in my opinion, of keeping well and healthy. And it's part of husbandry, it's part of your garden husbandry, like getting things, getting seedlings and cuttings moving on. Now, the next thing I want to show you is I'm going to show you my planting up video first. Oh, let me just stop that a moment. And then I want to show you how to side shoot tomatoes. And the side shooting of tomatoes can also share screen, share sound. I'll show you in just a moment. So can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yep, good. So this is just how I plant my tomatoes. Jeff might have another way of doing it. And I'm going to show you afterwards how to side shoot.
Hi there. At last I've got a videographer recording me. So I'm going to show you, it's the wrong time of year, but I'm going to show you how to put a tomato plant in the ground. You don't have to do it this way. You can put it straight in the ground, you can put it in a grow bag, you can put the pot on the patio. But the reason I'm doing this is because it retains the moisture right at the bottom of the pot, and it makes sure that the moisture gets in from the bottom. When you water it from the top, it then stays within the pot. I'll show you. So if you have a look at these, the way I've got these pots, this is to maximise the growing space in this border. So I'm kind of putting them one opposite the other, and I will put them all the way along. And I filled this one with some compost from the compost heap. And all I'm going to do now is dig a hole here in this area. That's a lovely piece of feverfew, which I'll save for another time. Put that there for now. So I'm just going to dig a little bit of a hole here, see if we can get that done quick. You can see all the lovely soil that I've made over the last few years. Put that in level, push this all the way around. And then we've got something that retains the water when you put the water in, and it means as well the water gets trapped underneath the soil, so that all of this soil helps shield the bottom of the roots and keeps them nice and moist. This is mole string I've just tied together from last year's crop. What I'm going to do now is just tie this around here like this. Let me see if we can do this as quickly as possible. So just put a couple of double knots in this string. So it's gone around the top of the pot like this. And then I'm just going to pull it up to the top, and I'm literally going to string it over this hosepipe. And I'm just going to tie not to hold it up like that. Now you might want to put that round to the side so you can get. So what will happen now is I'll put my tomato plant here. You can come in a bit. Put my tomato plant in here, and as it grows up to about here, I'll start winding the growing tip into the string. And what that makes sure is that the tomatoes swing upright. You can also use long sticks, obviously, but I do find after a season they tend to fall over. But you can, obviously, there's no reason why you can't use that. So I just tend to use the string approach, just because it makes them stand upright. So I do this planting in the greenhouse and in the garden, and this is why I've got this crossbar and these poles in outside, so that I can do the same inside as outside. So obviously it's only March the 11th today, so it's not like you're going to be planting tomatoes out just yet, but just so that I can give you an idea of how to plant. Then next time, maybe mid-May, when your tomato plants are so tall and they're ready to go in, you can just go in. So I hope that's given you some ideas. I'll see you in the course of Friday.
That was Rob doing his videographer thing. Good, eh? Cool. So basically, I wanted to show you that now because, you know, we're finishing next week. We do have an option to continue if we want, but we're finishing next week, and I don't want you to think, oh, what do I do with my plants now? Where do I put them? How do I stake them? What, you know, what happens to them? Whether they're inside or outside, I find that the stuff that I put inside in the greenhouse or the polytunnel will obviously produce fruit a lot sooner because it's a heat trap and it was sun trap, and it will bring the plants on a lot quicker. And the stuff that we're growing outside will fruit a little bit later, so it's a good way of getting the relay of plants, of fruits throughout the season. So I just want to show one other video I've got two actually, but let me just show you this little one, not this one. This is the one. Let me just share my screen once more. Stop. Let me just share screen. Share sound, share screen. Right, you should be able to see this now. Yeah, good. This is just a literally 2.5 minute video, and she's going to show you how to side shoot.
In this short video, it's another step that you need to take when growing tomatoes. Tomatoes are a really vigorous, fast-growing plant, and what you aim to achieve is one upright on the tomato. And what happens is that they grow side shoots where the stem and branch meet, and these side shoots need to be removed. Otherwise, they'll grow lots of side shoots, put all the energy into plant growth, and we want to concentrate it into producing flowers and fruit, the tomatoes. So we're just going to look in close up at the side shoots and what you need to do to remove them. Here you can see in close up the side shoot that I'm talking about, and another one here. They're very small. You can nip them out with your fingers, but if you do that, you might end up with, in fact, very green fingers because there's a lot of them. So it's better just to snip them out with a pair of pruners. Okay.
Okay.
Wherever you see these side shoots, you need to snip them off, and they will grow regularly on the plant all through the summer. Keep removing them, as it's an essential part of getting a good crop. And here the tomatoes just started to produce the first flowers, and that's a good sign, and also a sign to start feeding it. Don't overfeed tomatoes in these initial early stages, just feeding them once a week and then increasing the feed as the tomato plant grows and it develops more and more flowers. The other thing to bear in mind is that this tomato is now too big for its pot. It's grown on from when it was potted up earlier on, and it's ready to be put into a large pot where it will spend the rest of the summer whilst it's producing the tomatoes. There are a lot of different ways you can grow tomatoes. You can put them into grow bags, large troughs, large pots. Sometimes you can grow them outside if you've got a warm sheltered spot. I'm going to grow them in the greenhouse because my garden isn't very sheltered, and that's the best way to get a good crop. And I'm going to put them into large individual pots. But you can grow them in grow bags and you can grow them outside. It's really a matter for what space you have. But we're going to look at growing them in large pots now.
Okay, so that's just a little lesson. I didn't manage to copy the chat in the last video, but that's just a little lesson in side shooting tomatoes. They will just go wild. The first year I grew tomatoes, I didn't do anything to them, and I think I got about 3 tomatoes off a whole plant, because they were so busy putting their energy into the leafy greens. Now, the other thing she didn't say, and which is also a good way of getting more fruit, is as your plants grow tall and you take the side shoots out, you also take the bottom leaves off. So you take the bottom leaves off because you want to protect your plants from tomato blight, and the tomato blight is waterborne, and the water tends to splash on the soil, and all of the spores, the tomato blight spores, bounce up onto the lower leaves, and that's when you can start getting a tomato blight infection. So take your lower leaves off, and again what happens then is the energy goes up the plant into the fruits and into the higher leaves. In some Jeff might be able to jump in a moment, but in some cases you'll find that tomato growers end up with just a long bare sort of stem with just a few leaves at the top, with loads of trusses of tomatoes hanging off all around the bottom. So they literally strip all the leaves off just so there's just a sort of a spray at the top, nip out the growing top around about mid-August, and then you've got a bit of photosynthesis happening with the green leaf at the top, and then all of the tomato trusses at the bottom are getting really, really ripe. That's where all the energy is going instead of all the green leaves at the bottom. So I haven't got a video on that, but I'm happy to look one up for next week if anyone wants one. Also, there's another little secret I learned a number of years ago at a gardening show that I went to, and that was if you want very sweet tomatoes, plant them closer together and cut them off, cut the growing tips off after there are 2 or 3 trusses. A truss is all the little, you know when you buy tomatoes that are all on the vine? So that's called a truss when they're all on the vine. And when there's 2, maybe 3 trusses on the vine, cut the top off, and then it won't produce any more tomatoes, except the ones that are on the vine, that are actually growing. And what then happens is all of the energy goes into the tomatoes and you get super sweet tomatoes. So that was a little trick I used. I did use it once, it did work. It was outdoors. Eventually at the end of the season it got blight and the tomatoes didn't do so well. And that might have been because I planted them more close together, they didn't have so much air circulation, the spores were more able to get onto the plant, etc. But it does work really well. So, has anyone, Jeff, would you like to comment? I've just asked to unmute you.
Hello.
Hi, we've got you.
Oh, you can hear me good, right?
Yeah.
Very, very interesting the way you put things together there, Jenny. Right, now tomatoes. I am a lover of growing tomatoes. Then everybody got different ways of doing it. Now, first of all, when my tomatoes are growing, and when they're around about, say, 6 to 8 inches tall, that's on the top of the soil, I plant mine in a different way. If they're not going to go into pots, they go into the ground in my greenhouse. And what I do is this. I never put them in straight. I always make a hole 45 degrees on the slope. And I put that tomato plant in that way, so it's facing down. If you can see the way I'm pointing, facing down. Now, on those, on the vines, I call them the vines of tomato, you see a lot of airs. Now, all those airs are roots. So by putting it on an angle, 45 degrees angle, I can guarantee you the following morning, after you get a nice water nut, the following morning, that tomato plant will be dead up straight. It will automatically come straight up, straight again, so you're forming an extra root down the bottom of the tomato plant. Now, as the tomato grows right up through, I'll go up in stages if I may. Once it goes up, I take particular notice of the leaving situation. Now, I have, not on a regular basis, I have had the, what they call leaf turn. From the bottom set to the second set, the leaves start to turn inwards. And I thought, well, this is never right. There's always a reason for it. So I let it go now this year. And when I got up now to the third set of leaves, which was just under the first truss, this did not happen. So as Jenny just said now, I take off the first 2 set of leaves on the tomato plant completely out the way altogether. So everything is free down the bottom. There won't be no disease set in or nothing whatsoever. But I take particular notice of whether that tomato plant is going to start leaning. Now I see Jenny put a piece of string directly above it, said just twine it around the tomatoes goes up. I do that myself, but I have used canes. And as a matter of fact, the last time I used canes, because I couldn't stretch to get the string up there. Well, it's a nice strong cord it was. And I done all right with them. Now, what I have found, again, as it says in the video, you always pinch out the little side shoots in between. Now, I don't let my tomato plants have more than 4 trusses of tomatoes. I like 4 trusses. I feel that by keeping it 4 trusses of tomatoes, you get a better tomato. I can explain the reason why I say that in a minute. By having just the 4 trusses, you get a bigger crop, and also sometimes the tomato will be slightly bigger than you normally do if it goes to 5 trusses. Now, this is a thing that I found out over the years by studying it. if you have got a tomato that is growing on these tomato plants, the one thing you must not do is to let these tomatoes get completely red before you pick them. Before they are completely red, you must always pick them, and still leave what I call the little feeder nip on the top of the tomato. Don't ever take that off. Just cut that away and take them out. And I'll tell you the reason why. If you let them get over completely red, they start to over ripen themselves. And then sometimes well, not sometimes, the majority of times you'll find that tomato will start having a crack going around the top, either completely around the tomato or down on the side. So that tomato was telling you he is overripe and he should have been picked a long time ago, and that would not have happened. I've experienced this. No, actually, I've been very, very lucky, if you want to use that word. I've never got to the stage where I'm going to let that happen, only the once. And I couldn't understand why. But when I look back in my notebook, I found it a few years ago, I had the same problem with that one tomato. So I thought, right, I'm not going to let this happen again. Ever since, I do not let them get completely ripe up the top. And when you pick them, take them indoors, they will ripen up, but they will not crack because they're not getting no more food. They're just tomato as it, and they will settle themselves in. They're in growing as they should do. But as long as they are on a vine, they're going to try and take more food into the tomato, and it doesn't do them any good. And then if you feel that tomato when he's really red, you'll find you can get your forefinger and your thumb, just put it in, you can feel it moving in. It's going spongy. That's not a very good tomato. You want to be able to put your finger around that tomato where it's solid. When that is solid and not quite red up at top, you're going to have a lovely tomato. Now this doesn't always. I'm sorry.
Hold on, Jeff. Natalie, you can go on.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask Jeff. So you saying we need to cut it with scissors so we leave the little green stem on the tomatoes and then let them ripen indoors still on that green stem?
Exactly correct.
Now, as a bunch or just each individual one?
No, do one each individual one. Just cut it off the truss with that little stem on it and leave it on there and take it in the house and put them. I always lay mine on a piece of brown paper for a day or two because I don't like put them on top because the weight of one can bruise the other underneath and you'll get a soft spot on that tomato which will start causing a rot. Now, I also found that if that tomato sometimes some tomatoes grow better on one truss than they do on the other, and you've got to think yourself, well, why is this the case? Now, it is all to do with the feeding. The feed which you don't give, you can give tomato feed, whatever you wish to do, whatever you want to use, because there's so many different sorts out there. And it does reflect, the further up that tomato plant is, it don't always get the same amount of feed as what the bottom truss or the second truss will get. It does reduce. Now, it is, in my experience, it tells me that why should that happen? And this is the reason why I always go to 4 truss. I have had them up to 5 truss, 6 trusses sometimes. That was not doing any good, and the taste of the tomato was not the same. Since I cut it at 4 trusses, just above, you know what I mean, the taste of them was absolutely beautiful because the tomato, before you even feed it, it's got its own taste. It's got its own taste. When you add tomato feed, what you're actually sweetening. You're making that much sweeter. And it does make a big difference. I have proved time and time again on one of the old-fashioned tomatoes called Moneymaker. That tomato was very bland. But doing the method that I've done, I managed to get them to go sweeter. Not a great lot, but there is a difference. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
I find the same as that, Jeff. When I've grown Moneymaker, it's a very sort of mushy, bland tomato.
Yeah,
it's not terribly. Whereas Alicante is very beautiful, sweet. I find.
Well, Alicante is another good one. Gardener's Delight is another nice tomato as well. But I will say this. I think I've seen in your greenhouse, I happen to go on your site and I'm going to have big, that's a beautiful greenhouse that is. I'd love to have that. I noticed you had tomatoes in there. And I also noticed, so I've seen a word there, I might not pronounce this correctly, so please correct me. Aperitif. A tomato called aperitif. Aperitif. Aperitif.
Aperitif, sweet aperitif. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that one. Now, I was quite surprised because I never grew them before, but I did. And I tell you what, they're a very, very good crop of tomato. They are really, really nice. But I feed all my tomatoes exactly the same way. And like I said to you, if you don't cut the side shoots off, they'll go all over the place. If you don't put a wire to keep them straightened up, you'll have bent stems on it. I call them vines, I call them, and that they can bend. Now, someone said to me, and it was a very good question, why are some tomato stems or vines thicker than others? Now, here's something, that's something for you to ponder over. I found it as near possibly I can get the answer to that. And so I won't tell you what the answer is. I would like you to think about that one and find out why some tomato vines are thicker than the others. Now, so I've said that I know what the answer is, but I'm going to leave it to you so at a later date we can discuss it, which I'm hoping we're going to at some stage.
Okay, Jeff. Brilliant.
Very
So,
interesting.
anyone got any ideas why some tomato stems could be bigger than others? No?
Depends on the thickness of what you plant it in.
No, the thickness of the actual tomato stem.
Yeah, so does it depend on how deep you plant it, like as in the soil that you plant it in, so how far the roots
No,
can go?
you're trying to get the answer out of me now.
That's what you're here for, man. Come on, what's the answer?
Yeah, right. What it was, these tomato plants, a lot of them they've been grafted. Now, what happens is when the tomato plant has been grafted, it will always have that nature in it when it's grown again from a seed, because the seeds come out with that method within them. Now, if you take let's take a cherry tomato. They're always thin, very thin stem they are, except for one, which is slightly thicker than normal. And the growing procedure is more or less the same. But as you know, with cherry tomatoes, you get millions. You get sweet million. You get thousand sweet one. That's the name of it. There's so many different types, and there's a lot of variation in growing tomatoes, and everybody thinks about these things. Or they think, oh, they're growing. I'm just going to pick them out. As long as I nip them side shoot out, I'm going to make good tomatoes. But if you look after your tomatoes, you're going to have really wonderful tomatoes. You mustn't neglect it. Now, you haven't to mention about water. Now, under normal circumstances, I always water from the bottom. Very rarely do I water from the top, because I like the roots to go and search for water, and it takes it up. Because if you put water around the actual stem, you can cause a lot of rot and get problems with that. And you should always keep the water away from the main stem. I do exactly the same with my onions, my carrots, everything. It's always watered from the bottom. And like I say, never had no problems. And I'm only telling you what I do. Other people might like to do other things, do things a different way. That is fine. That is fine. But
Okay,
tomato is one of the things, wonderful things to grow. You can learn quite. Oh, one thing, if I may mention. It happened to me last year, and I had to go to the chemist because I thought it poisoned my hands. Have you ever heard of tomato tar or tomato dust? Right, I had a gardener's delight plant come there, and it was complete of what they call tomato tar. It's like a dust, very green on them, all the leaves. And me, unknown to it, I caught all of it, and my hands was green. And it was green. Oh, dear me, I thought what that. So I went in and washed it off. I must have been too late. Next day, I had hands like a great big monster boxer. Everything, my thumb, my fingers were all swollen. And I said to the Sue, the manager of the chemist, look, Sue, look, good God. First thing she turned around and said to me, have you been using gel when you go in shops, you know, got the gel on your hands? I said, no, because I don't go out. So when I told her what it is, she said, that's what's caused it. It's on a tomato, it's what they call tomato tar or tomato dust. That's the first time I ever had that. So please, whenever you're doing that, please take notice. If you see one and it's dust on it, you can't see it because it's green. But if you see it and you get a bit on your glove or you're thinking, please get it off straight away. It is terrible, terrible stuff.
Brilliant.
Also,
Thanks, Jeff. What I wanted to add as well is, I mean, pretend this is one of those little side shoots that came out of the tomatoes.
Yes.
And which you would normally throw on the compost.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually plant these and have another crop.
Yes.
So these will have tiny hairs all along the bottom. You just clip them off from the growing shoot, side shoot, put them in a soil immediately, very light soil, and they will continue to grow. So the minute you get your first side shoots off, if they're sort of late May, you can immediately plant them in. You've already got probably 6 weeks growing. You can imagine if you've grown that from seed, you've got about 6 weeks growing. So it's got a head start, and that will start another plant.
Yeah, that's quite true. You can always, you can plant anything. Actually, some people, they use a hormone powder just to dip it in to give it a start, but sometimes it doesn't need that. Now, as I pointed out just now, all tomato plants have all got ears, and all those ears are a root. They are a root of some description. And another thing I will say about cuttings, when you take a cutting, you should never cut it dead straight across. You should always cut it on a slope. And that is, it's better. It's been I used to think it was a wives' tale at one time, but no, it's true. It is really true. You cut it on a slope and you get better results, which means that you've got a wider gap for it to suck up, to drink soil, to drink the water. Whereas if it was flat, it would be struggling.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, that's lovely. That's brilliant. So listen, I'm really sorry about the massive interruption in the middle, but what we'll do is I'll get the recordings off of Nat. I've got obviously some recordings as well, so we'll patch them together and make them into one. I'll send it out on email, and you'll have all the links as well from all the videos that we watched, and some that we didn't watch because we've either not had time or I thought they weren't quite so necessary. So I just wanted to quickly say, if you want to get yourself seeding things like parsley, dill or basil, I seeded them in a tray the other week, but you can seed them directly into pots, just like you would buy them from Tesco's or Sainsbury's, and they will just come up in the pot, and you can do it like that. It saves all the transplanting. Yeah, just sow them reasonably thinly. All of my parsley came up, which I was really pleased about. They're about that big, and I put them into separate plants because one parsley plant can become quite big, and we want as much as we can get. And I'm going to leave them growing in the plug pots a bit longer, maybe another 2 to 3 weeks, and then I'll put them in the soil. So is that okay, Jeff?
Look, that is fine. I'm with you all the way, don't matter what you do. One thing I'd like to point out, I know we ain't got time today, but if it's possible to have another show like the same 2 weeks or 3 weeks time or whatever to suit you people, not to suit me, but to suit you, I would like to show you how my onions are growing, how they've grown, how big they are, and as regards to my carrots.
That would be fantastic. I tell you what we'll do, if everyone's in agreement, we'll finish the course next Friday, and maybe a week or 2 later we'll just have an open free-for-all.
Oh, everyone,
beautiful. And everyone that wants to come on, whether they're paid or not, it doesn't matter. Anyone who just wants to jump on and, pick Jeffrey's brains and pick my brains. and we'll just do a big open, open forum type
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Well, it don't matter who comes on, they ain't got to pay. All they got to do is pass a hat around.
Yeah, that's a bit difficult. So just a couple more notifications then, and that is that on Friday the 19th, I know some of you aren't local, but we have a campfire up at the polytunnel.
Oh, that's nice.
So you're welcome, 6 o'clock onwards. We're going to have food. Bring a guitar, bring a song or a
That's
poem
lovely.
or
That's lovely, that is.
something to drink, something to eat, and we're going to sit around the fire. And I think that's it. Oh no, Wednesday mornings from 10 till 12 at the polytunnel, we're having homeschooling for the next couple of weeks at least, and then we're going to move back onto the allotments. So I'll put all of these messages in the Telegram chat. I'll also mention it on the email. So last Wednesday morning we had 17 people at the polytunnel. We had 8 parents and 9 children. So it was amazing, really amazing. They absolutely gutted my polytunnel in like 2.5 hours. Whoosh! It was done. It would have taken me like a week. But it was completely done, and the kids were so happy. They planted on tomato plants and they took one home, and they were sawing wood, and they were, tipping compost and scraping it and tidying and making little plant labels. It was amazing. So that was always my vision to get Diggin It, and it never worked that way because the time wasn't right, and all I got, and don't get me wrong, I was grateful and I was pleased to help people, but I got people who had nothing else to do and were retired. Now that was fine, but I wanted the young ones in so that we show them a new way of living in the world, like a new culture, a new way of being. And now we've got this homeschooling group coming up on a Wednesday, and they're at the polytunnel next Wednesday. Possibly the Wednesday after we'll be at the allotments. We're kind of going to alternate, and we're going to set up another morning as well. So it's going to not just be Wednesday, we'll have either Tuesday or Thursday morning up. It is really beautiful, Nat, really lovely. So would you like to unmute yourselves one by one and just, feedback, sorry about the interruptions, and then we'll go. Dina. You were the first one.
I didn't mean to. Just a huge thank you. Thank you to you both. Amazing knowledge you both have. So, yeah, thank you very much for a lovely morning.
Hope you're growing well.
Not at all, but I'm trying, but nothing's showing yet. But.
Well, you've got a beautiful backdrop. You look like
Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Caroline?
That was very good, much good session this morning. If I could just pick your brains really quickly, so you can see this. These are black mustard seeds, which are just we've got them in curries, and they sprouted so quickly. I'm wondering whether to eat them as sprouts, or will I get like decent greens out of these?
Personally, I would take a dozen or so, and I'd just plant them on and see what happens, and then eat the rest as greens if you want. Yeah. So they're mustard, are they? What was the name of the mustard? Did it say?
They were just black mustard seeds from but we use as spice in our curries.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I plant a couple on because I plant something. It's a Chinese mustard. It's got a frilly leaf, and the leaf comes up quite big, and it tastes just like mustard, a leaf, and it's so beautiful in a salad. So plant a few on, see what happens as they grow, and then eat the rest. What a brilliant idea! Well done. I'm glad you've taken that on board. Well done. Thanks, Caroline. Liz, Catamol.
Hello. Thank you to both of you. Thank you, Jeff. I love all your wisdom. It's great to hear, and brilliant, really inspiring. Yeah, my seeds are coming along quite well. My tomato plants are growing, and my leeks and spring onions. I've got some parsley growing, so it's all doing okay. I think I'm going in the right direction.
You're
So
doing very
thank
well.
you.
Very
Thank
well.
you to you both. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Excellent. Well done, Liz. Regina?
Yeah, thank you both. It was very interesting. What I wanted to add is about the mulling. I said the flowers would be better. And if you want to dry them as a tea, they tend to attract moisture. So you must dry them well, and then put it in a glass that's well closed, so that they don't catch moisture, because they get very brown then.
Are you referring to the flowers, Regina?
The flowers, yes.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
And I'm really happy with my seedlings. I love them.
Are they doing well?
Yeah.
Cool. Sure. Nat?
Yeah, I've loved this morning. Obviously, I'll catch the beginning on catch up, but it's lovely just hearing all your knowledge and tips and everything. I've really appreciated it. It's lovely to meet you, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
I've got a few questions. I don't know if you saw in the group chat, I've had a bit of a nightmare this week, Jeff. All my seedlings that I'd put out very pleased with my £12 purchase from B&M.
Oh.
Got plastic greenhouse type thing. It blew over and took loads of my seedlings with it.
Oh dear, 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 dear.
So I have managed to save some of them, but what should I be planting now into the beds with what I've got? Because I think I've got some radishes and beetroot that are in bulbs. The radishes are in. So can I put them in the ground now, or just leave it for a little bit longer?
I do have to say that when me and Jenny were speaking, where you are, you've got entirely different weather than what I get where I am in South Wales. We get a bitter down northeast wind, but you're more pretty well even up there. I wouldn't be too afraid too much if you want to put in radishes or things like that. I really wouldn't. But again, I can't go against my word. I don't like to put anything out if there's any sign of frost about. If there's any sign of frost, be a little bit patient, put them in a greenhouse or somewhere, keep them under cover. It is always a wise thing. It's better to be, sure and sorry.
Okay, and my advice would be not to counter you, Jeff, but that if you do put it in the ground now, then, or in your raised bed, because I've seen your sit up there, Nat, is you need to cover them. So I would
definitely.
Yeah. So if you put them in the ground now, I'd put a little hoop. Just you can even get a wire coat hanger and unwrap the wire and just put the wire in the ground and just put either a fleece or a piece of plastic over, just for another couple of weeks, because it is still very early in the season. Yeah. But we're having an early start, so what you're looking for is maximum growing opportunities. We're looking for what they call in the trade season extension. So you get season extension into the sort of mid-spring and season extension into mid-autumn, and that's by using the cloches.
Okay, and is there a tomato feed that is the most organic? Is there something we should avoid with regards to tomato feed? And
I mean, I'll just repeat what I said recently, which is the comfrey and the stinging nettles in water. Leave them for a month, strain the nettles out and mix it down. So dilute it down because it's too strong on its own, and I would use that as a feed. Again, Jeff uses horse manure, I do too, or my own garden compost, and that's just a natural organic feed for tomatoes. In terms of buying an organic feed, I have no idea because I've never bought one. Jeff, what's your advice on feeding?
Well, like I say, I keep to what I said, and you're in agreement. I don't like using this sort of chemical. If you read the back of these chemicals that you buy, these feeds that you buy, you just look and see what is in it. You get a lot of different chemicals that's in it. But there is one thing that I will say which is very good for the garden is phosphate. That is very good. But the other one to use is fish blood and bone manure. But I always use horse manure, which is thoroughly cleaned and drained through lady stockings, may I tell you, through the bin. I always feed with that, and I've had no problems at all, none whatsoever.
Okay, excellent. Anything else now, or was that?
Thank you so much. I got a bit confused because I know what you'd said about watering your vegetable plants, and then I'd heard Jeff say about the manure in the stockings. But I was wondering if tomatoes needed a completely different type of feed. So just watering them with that in is perfect. And did you say phosphorus?
Yeah, phosphorus is another good one.
Perfect.
It's a good one.
Thank you.
But like I say, when you do water, excuse me interrupting, don't mind, Jen, just one quick one. If you do water your tomatoes, please don't water on the stem. You must not water on the stem, must always water on the outside. But if you got them in pots, always let the water down the bottom and let it soak up to the roots. As long as it gets to the tap root. Sorry.
I would recommend because I've shown you how to plant them in the ground in the pots, and last time or the week before I was talking about putting a layer of wood chip on the top to keep the moisture in. If you water onto the wood chip, then it won't splash up onto the stem. So you just water onto the wood chip and then it goes down, and it doesn't splash. Because what you want to avoid is splashing the microbes on the soil onto the tomato itself. That's what you want to avoid.
Yeah, that's quite true, Jenny. Quite true. You know, there's, everybody got different ways, but no, that's a good one.
Yeah. So Jeff, I just want to say thank you for joining us today, and just been really lovely to have such a calm, sort of well-established grower who knows exactly, he's been watching the seasons for decades, and you know how your garden grows. It's just such a pleasure. So thank you for joining us.
Anytime, I'm always available, and like I say, we've covered quite a bit of ground today. We've got to go more on to the vegetable side, the bigger vegetables, such as your carrots, your leeks, your onions, and whatever. Perhaps we can do that again.
Yeah, we've done a lot of that. We have done a lot of that already because we're on week 5.
Yeah.
But, I think if we do this completely open forum in a couple of weeks' time, once we've finished our course, we'll invite you back and we'll just see what who wants to join us and what we can glean, because it will be several weeks on into the season, people's plants will be growing, and so on and so forth.
And you never know, perhaps in the summer, I might come up around your area.
Hey!
Gardening and
that'll be nice.
You never know. I like a little ride out now and again, go and see my friends I've never met. No, that would be lovely, but you never know. Oh, I tell you where I will be going this year, though, without a doubt. I'm going to Wisley Garden. Is it Wisley?
Wisley.
Oh, yeah. I've been to Kew. Nice, but I was not impressed with the vegetables there. But still, I've got to be careful what I'm saying. But I'm definitely going to Wisley and whatever you call it this year, definitely.
Excellent.
So is that too far away from you?
Anyone know where Wisley is? I know it's not so far away. Is it Hertfordshire or is it Essex? I don't know.
I haven't got a clue,
I don't know either.
I'll go by sat now.
Listen, guys, I really want to finish the call. We're 1:15, and I don't know about you, but that's already eaten. I'm starving. So we're going to close now. So see you next week. And now I know that my laptop overheats on this table. We won't do this next time. Bye, everyone.
Just one thing. Who's that? We never spoke to Dana. Is that Dana I see there?
Did we see? No, we spoke to Dina.
Maybe I can't recall her.
Yeah.
Hi. Oh.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye to you all.